Simplifying, adding, and subtracting fractions.
Before we get started, let's look at some definitions. First, we have a rational number. A rational number is any number that can be expressed as a fraction. So any fraction that you see is, of course, a rational number. Also, any whole number that you see is a rational number. And any decimal that terminates or repeats is a rational number. Next, let's look at the definition of a numerator. So once you have a fraction, let's say 3/5, the numerator is the number above the fraction bar. So the numerator in this case would be a 3. The denominator is the number below the fraction bar. So if we look at 3/5 again, the denominator would be the 5. Some other notes are as follows. First, it's important to know that the fraction bar is also a division symbol. So if we had 10/2, this is a fraction, but it also can be written as a division problem as 10 divided by 2. Also note that negative and positive whole numbers or integers can be written as a fraction by placing a 1 underneath the fraction bar. So if we have a -10, we can rewrite this as a fraction by placing a 1 underneath it. So we could do -10/1. The same thing for positive numbers. If we had a positive 150, we could write that as a fraction by placing a 1 underneath it. So 150/1, that would be a fraction. The first question asks us to simplify -8/10. To do this, we want to see if there is a number that both 8 and 10 are divisible by. So what number can you think of that divides evenly into 8 and also divides evenly into 10? Well, both 8 and 10 are even numbers, so I know that they're both divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide the top number by 2 and the bottom number by 2. It's important that you divide both the top and the bottom by the same number. So -8 divided by 2 is a -4. And then 10 divided by 2 is a +5. If you look at 4 and 5, we can ask ourselves if there's another number that we can divide 4 and 5 by into evenly. So there isn't another number. That's because 5 is a prime number, so the only factors are 1 and 5. And 4 is not divisible by 5. So the simplified fraction is just -4/5. To type in -4/5 in my math lab, we'll put our cursor in the answer box. You can select the negative sign or minus sign on your keyboard, or you can select it in the math toolbox by clicking More and then selecting the minus sign. Next, we need to select the fraction template. This will give us a space to write a number on top of the fraction bar and beneath the fraction bar. First, we're going to type in the 4 for our numerator. Next, we'll take our cursor and click beneath the fraction bar to move our cursor underneath that bar. And we'll type in a 5. Once we typed in our fraction, we can select Check Answer. We have some more notes. We're going to be asked to add or subtract fractions with unlike denominators. If we have different denominators, we have to follow these rules. So if I have a over b plus c over d, I can add the fractions together by doing a times d plus b times c, and then dividing it by bd. The same way, if I wanted to subtract the fractions with unlike denominators, I do a times d minus b times c over b times d. Let's look at a couple of examples. I want to perform the subtraction. I have 2/9 minus 1/3. So I'm going to subtract fractions with unlike denominators. That means that the bottom numbers are different. So I'll use my formula that says a over b minus c over d is the same thing as a times d minus b times c over bd. So the first step is to multiply a times d together. So that's 2 times 3. Then I'll subtract b times c, which is 9 times 1. Next, I'll place that over b times d, which is 9 times 3. Now that I've plugged all my numbers in, I can just perform the calculations. First, we want to multiply 2 times 3 together. That gives me a 6. Next, 9 times 1 gives me a 9. And then the denominator is 9 times 3, which is 27. Now I'm going to subtract the top numbers. 6 minus 9 is a -3. So I have -3 over 27. Now my instructions tell me to simplify my answer. So I want to think of a number that 3 and 27 are both divisible by. I know that 3 and 27 are both divisible by 3. So I'll divide the top by 3 and the bottom by 3. A -3 divided by a +3 is a -1, and 27 divided by 3 is a 9. So my answer is -1/9. To type in -1/9, we'll put our cursor in the answer box. We'll type in the minus sign using our keyboard, or again, you can select more and select the minus sign there. Next, we'll select the fraction template, put our cursor in the numerator position, type in a 1, then move our cursor beneath the fraction bar and type in a 9. Perform the calculation. Express the answer as a positive or negative quotient of two integers in reduced form. I have 5 over 27 minus 4 over 7 plus 1 over 3. First, I'm going to subtract these two fractions. So I'm going to use my rule or my formula that says a over b minus C over D is the same thing as A times D minus B times C over B times D. So A times D is 5 times 7 minus B times C, which is 27 times 4, over B times D, which is 27 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35. 27 times 4 is 108. And 27 times 7 is 189. $35 minus 108 is a negative 73. And then we have it over 189. Now I know that 5 over 27 minus 4 over 7, this portion, is negative 73 over 189. So I'm going to rewrite my problem. My problem is now negative 73 over 189 plus 1/3. Since to finish my problem, I have to add that 1/3. Now I'm going to use the formula for addition, which is A times D plus B times C over B times D. So I have a negative 73 times 3 plus 189 times 1 all over 189 times 3. Negative 73 times 3 is negative 219. 189 times 1 is just 189. And then 189 times 3 is 567. Negative 219 plus 189 is a negative 30. And it's still over the 567. Now I want to find two numbers that evenly divide into 30 and 567 because I want to simplify my answer. So you can go on your calculator and see what numbers go into both 30 and 567. I know that 3 goes into 30 evenly. So on your calculator, you can see if 3 goes into 567 evenly. And it does. So we can divide both the top and the bottom by 3. Negative 30 divided by 3 is a negative 10. And then 567 divided by 3 is 189. I can't simplify this any further, so my answer is negative 10 over 189. In my math lab, we'll type in negative 10 over 189. So we'll put our cursor in the answer box, type in the negative sign, select the fraction template, type in a 10 above the fraction bar, move our cursor beneath the fraction bar, and type in 189.